started. It is Monday, November 15th, 2021 for this special school board meeting. So thank you, those who could be in attendance. So we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Item 1 is adoption of the agenda.
I'll move that we accept the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any board discussion? Seeing none. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none. Any remote public comment on this item? Renee?
No, Mr. Cassiopo.
Thank you. Board, all those in favor? Aye. Item 2, motion passes. Item 2 is flag salute. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 3 is discussion and possible action to establish the criteria and process in hiring a superintendent for the Carson City School District, which may include without limitation, 1, determination of the salary range for the new superintendent, 2, determination of the goal number of superintendent applicants to recommend to the Board of Trustees for consideration, 3, selection of location and process to conduct interviews, 4, establishment of possible interview questions, and 5, approval of the timeline for completing the superintendent search. This is going to be for possible action. We have with us tonight Dr. Deb Oliver, who is the director of the Nevada Association of School Boards, and they are whom we've contracted with to help us in the superintendent search. So our goal here tonight is really to take the next step in this process. The first couple steps were to kind of figure out an order we were going to have. We did send out a questionnaire to the community, and we have the results of that in our packet. And so now we're just trying to really at this point now get our feet under us and get this rolling forward. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Deb Oliver.
Thank you, President Cassiopo.
Thank you.
It's nice to be here with you all today as you embark on this journey for finding a superintendent for your district. Before we begin, I just want to make sure, was everybody able to get the packet of, can you hear me okay? All right.
Yes.
All right. Was everybody able to get the packet of information that had all of the questions and questions not to ask and all of process and that kind of thing? And you've had an opportunity to review those, and I know that those were posted publicly, so the public was also able to see those. Awesome. So,
One thing that there's a reference to see the attached spreadsheet for individualized comments, and that was not included in our packets.
oh, you're right, that was not printed, and you did not receive that link?
No.
Question for you. Would you like me to email that to you right now? Because that's the first thing we're going to talk about are those qualities and characteristics. We did take and compile those so that you had in that review what the main concepts were.
And those, I believe, were sent out in the electronic board packets?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just looked at the print, so I
Yeah,
didn't see 'em.
okay.
Okay, so they were there in the electronic?
They were in the electronic, just not in the hard copy.
Okay.
I can find the electronic on my phone.
I was going to say, would you still like me to email them to you, or can you get them?
That'd be great, if it's fast.
Might be. Hold on. Whoops. Oh, didn't want to do that. course, I have it open, so it won't attach. Just a second.
Dr. Oliver, would you like me to forward that same information from the electronic packet back to the trustees that had that information?
If you have it really handy, I'm adding everybody to an email now, so yes, that would be great, and I'll display it. How's that? There we go. So with this spreadsheet, and let me pull up here is the, I'm sorry, you're going to be looking at a double screen here. But as we look at the overall responses from the survey, we had a majority of the people that responded lived over 10 years here in the district. So that really shows that we have people that are that are here and want to be very involved in this. We had over 330 responses for the survey. It was delivered in both English, in the English language and the Spanish language. And so you see what was there. We had 67% of the respondents were district employees, and we have many of the respondents were parents of those that were here, as well as some were parents as well as district employees. But this graph that you saw that was in there, that really was a culmination of, they could mark everything they were, that they could identify to, whether it was an employee, a parent, a grandparent, a parent of an elementary school or middle schooler. So we really, I believe it was at the request of President Casiopo, to really find out who are we talking to. So we really tried to narrow that down for you so you could see who was responding. On the spreadsheet, when you get that, as you look at it, and what is one of the nice things about having the spreadsheet is you can sort in many ways. You can sort by parent, you can, by who was there, you can sort by years that they've lived in the community to find out what their comments and thoughts are. But as I mentioned, the team put together a list of taking all of those ideas and taking those top ideas and bringing them together. And that's within the packet. So the most common theme for qualities, as you can see on the screen behind me, let me make that maybe just one page. Too big. So we have accountable, community involvement, clear communicator, caring, common sense, creative thinker, decision maker, decisive, dedicated to the values of the work, educational leader, fiscally responsible, high integrity, high expectations, honest, integrity was loud and clear in all of the comments. Listener, be of sound moral judgment and moral character, have patience, be proactive and responsive. These were pulling together the community's thoughts of what the characteristics or qualities that they felt the new superintendent should be. So I want you now to take some time and think about, and I know you've been thinking about this so much, but what would your top 3 desires, if you were thinking of qualities or characteristics for your next superintendent? And if you would think of your top 3, we're going to cull them together and we'll add to it, and we'll do a little workshop-y with it to see where we come with what those are. That's not what I wanted. When you're ready, just, when you had time and you're ready, just give me a thumbs up. I know we've still got some thinking happening. Another minute? Okay, well, let's come together and talk about our qualities. The qualities of your superintendent as you are searching are incredibly important in the decision-making process. And they really are going to be those things that you may have candidates that have the same kinds of qualifications when we do a checkbox, the compliance of yes, we have this, yes, we have that. Understanding who you are looking for is incredibly important for the fit of working with you as a board, and also thinking about who's going to be working with your staff here in the district. Who's going to be the person that is your community relations person? Who's working with the parents, the children, the students, the kids? So the qualities of this person are a very important piece. And when we are talking about the quality, I'll just use one of them here, integrity. We're going to take time to define what that means to us so that we all have a common understanding of who we're looking for. So to begin the process, what I'd like to do is I'll start with President Casiopo, and if you'll name your top 3, and we're really going to go through and everybody will add their 3. If it's already been mentioned, you don't need to, you can tell us, but I won't retype it that we have that again. All right? Does that a clear understanding there? So President Casiopo?
Yeah, thanks, Deb. It's tough to pick a top 3 because I always have more than that, but to follow the rules, I'll say ethical, someone who has a district vision, and a student advocate.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Varner?
Yeah, there again, it was tough to pick just three because they're all important. But I chose educational leader because we're dealing with learning loss and we need somebody with a strong educational, who could be a strong educational leader. Then I chose high integrity because I felt that took up several of these. You know, if you have high integrity, you're going to be honest, you're going to be moral, etc. And then someone who's fiscally responsible, because the next few years we're going to be facing some real financial difficulties.
Thank you, yeah. Ms. Crossman?
Okay, I had high integrity. I agree that includes a lot of things, including ethical. Also, I put decision maker because this is a position that someone has to make decisions, and sometimes people aren't going to like them. And also, listening, responsive, and communicator. I think they all go together.
Yeah, you can put those in the same. Thank you. Trustee Ramirez?
Okay, so I chose community involvement, and that means getting all stakeholders involved. Decision maker with the student's best interest, and integrity.
Thank you.
I chose high integrity, honesty, morality. Those are my important qualities. I'd like someone who puts the needs of the students and the staff before their own ambition. I think that's going to be important. You look around with other districts and the problems they have with sometimes superintendents, a lot of it is about ego.
Thank you.
I had the same as Laurel. Exact three.
Listening, responsive, communicator,
Yeah, and
Okay.
integrity.
integrity, honesty. Thank you.
So I have responsive decision maker, high integrity, and educational leader with high expectations.
Do you all have the list? Does it coming up in front of you as well as on the
It
screen?
is, yeah,
Oh,
we have
good.
it
I
on
just
the
wanted to make
monitors.
sure because it's kind of hard to read from that far. So thanks, just making sure. So when we look at the list, you all, thinking of the top three, and it's really hard. How do I take all of this and put it into a top three? Take a moment, take a look, reflect for a moment. Is there anything on that list or is there anything that is not represented on that list? I'm sure there's a lot, but I mean of a focus.
I would just say in terms of communication, I think having some skills in dispute resolution. The superintendent, either directly or indirectly, is involved in everything from contract negotiations to the various opinions of a board, various opinions of the public and the staff, and being able to communicate, represent, and find a way to reach common ground is important. So I just lumped that all under dispute resolution.
Did I put it in the wrong ring? Under communication? Is that what you said, under communication? To add that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I was trying to see where it, Anything else to add? Because we're going to go through now and talk about what each of these means, and that will be more of an open conversation. So when we talk about ethical, what is ethical? What does that mean?
For me, it's how a person conducts themselves in public and in private.
And when you say how they can conduct themselves, we're talking about ethical behavior. What does that look like?
Well, I think one aspect is, again, putting the district in front of themselves. Really, whatever they're doing it in a manner that the district can be proud of. You know, meaning if your superintendent's out every Saturday night taking shots with his buddies, may not be something as a district we're proud of. It's, you know, conducting yourself. I look at it as integrity, what you do when people aren't looking.
But I think we want to be careful with that because ethical, I see as the way you are treating people with respect. And so are you valuing confidentiality? Are you following the laws? Are you treating people appropriately, whether it's public, student, employees, trustees? You know, I think ethical is different than drinking would be a morality issue. And I think I would hate to start with, we don't want you to drink alcohol with your friends, when what we're really saying is we want you to be an ethical leader of our school district. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think they, you know, I was, maybe was being a little lighthearted, but that's the idea is, you know, how you represent yourself in a number of different capacities. And yeah, professionally and personally is really, I was trying to just capture it under an overall umbrella. But I would agree with your assessment as well.
Does that encapsulate it? It is so much more what you've said. I'm just trying to catch a snippet. Anything else?
Well, and I want to specifically put in there that we're treating individuals with respect. Because so much when you hear of dysfunction in school districts, it's because people are not treated respectfully. And we really fight that in this district. And I want to make sure that we maintain that with our next leader.
And when you're talking individuals, broad, every single individual, regardless of, I would just say every single individual.
Yeah.
Consensus on that?
Everybody.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about has district vision.
I think the next superintendent has to have a good vision of where he or she wants to see the district grow into. Because if you don't have a vision, you're not going to know if you ever get there, you know, at the end.
But I think that's why the strategic plan is such a helpful thing, because that's more of our vision, and that
Right.
should be their vision.
Right.
So a question there, with a new superintendent, thinking of that with the strategic plan, are you looking for a superintendent that has the ability to look at the strategic plan and say, here are some ideas we may want to bring forward within that? Or are you saying, we would like to find somebody that is going to look at our strategic plan and say, yes, I'm going to implement this? Little different.
I would say I'd like them to look at our strategic plan, use it as the basis, but provide input on how maybe they feel it could be refined towards the pursuit of student achievement.
And the vision could also be above and beyond our strategic plan. You know, what is their overall vision for the district? It may be overreaching what's in the strategic plan. They may have different ideas of how they can make and improve the district. So that could be part of the vision, is the improvement of the district overall.
Agree? Good? More?
And I think really one of the things we need with vision is this is a district in an area that's growing rapidly. So there's a lot of growth and little opportunities for new schools, and the revenue needed to build appropriate levels of schools is going to be a challenge. And so that vision has to be community-wide. So it's not just the superintendent. I think in 10 years, we're going to look back and say, Mr. Stokes had it easy in retrospect. This person is going to have to be a community leader with vision about what is needed in the future and how to get us there.
Any other thoughts? All right. A student advocate. What does that look like?
I think that goes along with putting students' needs before their own. I think that goes along the lines of making sure that resources and materials are available to all students, to making sure that in our budget, when we plan it, that we plan for the needs of all the students in our district.
Pretty clear cut. Kind of what we live on you live on a day-to-day basis. Okay, make sure we're all on the same. So educational leader with high expectations. Educational leader could have different types of definitions. What is your definition for that educational leader?
Well, I would say we certainly want somebody with teaching and school administration experience. That's super important.
With teaching and? So sort of in that consensus mode, does anybody think otherwise of having had the teaching experience in their background? So in other words, when we're thinking of this educational leader, it's not going to be somebody that's only spent time in the business world, in the educational business world, or specifically in educational administration. That is a key piece.
In my mind, I think it'd be very important to have somebody who has classroom experience, because you don't know what the teachers are going through unless you've been there, and maybe you can better understand their needs,
Okay,
if you've been in the classroom.
perfect. So teaching and administrative, so educational leader could mean other things. What else might it, having been a teacher and having had some administrative experience, that's a portion of things. What else might it mean to be an educational leader?
I think it's also how to pull your staff together from the executive level down to the sites, basically to pull everybody together towards a common goal. And of course, academics is top on that list, but doing it in a way that you're not, you can do that and beat people up pretty easily. And we experience that along with every other district. We ask a lot. And so how do you rally everybody together to gain that support so you're all moving in the same direction to ensure these students have the best education we can provide them?
Nice. Any other thoughts?
Well, and I would also say that we want another way somebody could be an educational leader is service to the state and district, serving on commissions, testifying to the legislature, possibly introducing legislation, which is going to impact schools. And so I think that there's a component of leadership and advocacy that could also be a layer if you're really differentiating.
I'm trying to think of a word. Through outside district involvement. that encapsulate? These are reminder statements. They are not
Yeah.
the complete. These are just reminder statements. Anything else for educational leader? Okay. High integrity. This was a very, very common theme among all of the so many comments in everything that they were able to comment on. So what is your definition or thoughts around that high integrity?
We used to always define integrity in simple terms, to doing the right thing when no one's watching.
Would anybody like to add to that?
I think, and for me, it goes kind of hand in hand with being ethical, but if a superintendent with integrity is going to be somebody that when they go out and they meet with the public, or they go to the legislature, or they're meeting in the schools, they're conducting themselves in a manner that represents the district well.
So being accountable to their
Being accountable
actions,
to their
accountable
actions,
to
to what they say, how they act.
Okay,
And also not just, based on their own, but, we talked about communication and whatnot. So being able to digest the communication they've had with others, understand the wants and needs of the board, this community, the staff, and ensuring those thoughts and concerns are carried with them as they conduct themselves in whatever capacity they happen to be in, or wherever they happen to be at the time.
does that make sense for everyone?
Really? Couldn't quite get it out of my head.
I think integrity also in that position involves handling of grants money, handling of all the type of things that if I want someone to be above board with how class size reduction, I don't want any fudging on how we're doing things like that, making sure that everything aligns with that, with the law and with the ways in which we are directed to spend the funds that we receive. And also, just thinking of integrity, I'd like a superintendent who is consistent, irrespective of which group might be, the position of the district, the position of the individual remains. It's not something where one group is told one thing, another group is told another thing, where there's consistency that way.
So so being consistent with their actions and words, no matter who they're speaking to, which ties into that accountability piece. I am accountable for what I say to you. I'm accountable for what I say to you.
Well, and I almost feel like we could just pull honesty into that one, because we basically also described being honest.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'll take these two just for that, because they, well, maybe not, we won't. High integrity, they have some similarities, but they also may have a little a separation. So I really want you to understand what you all are thinking about what these are. So fiscally responsible. This past weekend, we had several opportunities to learn about what's coming down the road in a fiscal manner for every district. So being fiscally responsible. Let's clarify that, define that. I say define, it's really clarify, put your ideas in.
It's someone who can live within a budget, make the hard decisions if budget needs to be adjusted. And basically just being able to live within the budget and the money that the district has. And to try to get the best, for lack of a better term, bang for the buck.
Well, and I would also add on to that, Richard, using resources to best meet the needs of students. Because there's a lot of things in a school district that might not necessarily impact the students as much as other things.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going, was being able to understand what the budget is, what the needs are, and to be able to prioritize those needs so that in the end, what's in place is in the best interest of the students.
I want to add a little caveat right here, sort of an outside, because it's the think about, as when we get to the time when we're looking at questions, the reasons we're talking about this, these are the things you're thinking about, not only in the questions that you're going to be asking, but the things you're looking for in the responses or the examples that are given to you from the applicants. And so, and this one is, as you've stated, with what's coming down the pike, is something that is going, you're glad you have AJ.
Always.
So, using resources to best meet the needs of students. Thinking on that fiscal side, how creative are you willing to have a new superintendent be to be able to meet those needs? Is that something that you're looking for, or are you looking for somebody that's more, hey, pretty much, here it is?
I would say we don't want creative, I don't know. I mean, we want, we're a pretty conservative group around here, so.
And I was thinking creative but legal, like obviously, we don't want to.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, oh, believe me, I don't mean creative in other ways, but looking at things, right. No, and that's not what I meant. Oh, gosh, no. But just, I was thinking about what you're saying about, to best meet the needs of students. Could be things that you haven't thought of yet, or that haven't been brought ideas here yet. That's what I'm talking about in a creative way, as you're talking. Those are things to think about, because I'll stop with any
Yeah.
because.
No, I think that's important. I think we need someone that is creative and, of course, an ethical, logical way.
Right.
But also someone who's collaborative, because we have good people here. We have our CFO and other people, and we need a leader, but we need a leader that listens and absorbs it all and then decides, this is what makes sense and this is the direction we should go.
Joe, and you kind of took the words out of my mouth, because I was going to say we need somebody who's collaborative, because in addition to that, Rich is very collaborative with the board. And so those conversations we do have, and when we need to have them those years that it's time to start tightening our belt, we start having those conversations whether we want to or not. So collaboration is going to be huge.
Okay.
And I think we also need somebody who's able to look out in the future to determine the financial needs of the district.
So forward thinking in that way. As you were talking about the growth and what's coming, how are we going to be looking to do that? Again, examples you may be looking for. So decision maker with students' best interest. Is that one self-explanatory?
I would just like to add, if we can make sure that the decisions that are being made are really thought out with the idea of, is there anything else that we can do for the best interest of the student? Have we explored all options to make sure that the student is going to be successful with this decision?
I'm going to put exhaust all possibilities. Okay.
I don't know where this fits, but there's an expression, and I don't mean it to be just man, but it's a good man in a storm. And I think we want a good person to captain our ship, no matter what waves may sail it, somebody who can keep the ship righted through decisions that, making good decisions.
And I think that's what, because the bottom one, the responsive decision maker, I think I was thinking that same way, that looking at what we're experiencing and then having the courage to make a decision.
Okay. So this one is, we're pretty much lumped together: listening, responsive, communicator, collaborative. It's all communication skills. And so along with skills of conflict, how to resolve conflict, what's that resolution for different things moving forward? Is there something you'd like to add to that when we think of responsive? Give me an example or a thought of what you're thinking for responsive.
Well, I think that everybody on the board would agree that whoever is in the superintendent role has to be a good communicator, not only with the board, staff, the students, and the community. So, I mean, we got to have somebody who is a very good communicator, is not afraid to get out in the community, attend different meetings, and talk to people, and explain, what's going on with the district. Being responsive if there's questions being asked, being responsible to the public, to the staff, with some kind of answer.
And if I may add, be firm with the decision, because, we have some instances where we have assertive parents, and those assertive parents may go direct to the superintendent and not go through the proper channels. So making sure that the parents know the proper chain of command and also be able to be firm with the decision.
Okay. Put that there. Nice. Community involvement. I know in this community, there's so much involvement with everything that you all do, that Mr. Stokes has done over the years with the community. Is there a standout? What is something that I don't know if you can put this into a definition or an idea around how are you going to know the type of community involvement you're looking for? What might you want to see?
I'd like to see a superintendent who's visible in our community, who attends school activities, school events. I'd like to see a superintendent who is visible in other areas of the community. I know Mr. Stokes is involved with the Rotarians. I don't know that would be the only one. I wouldn't limit it to that, but some other community involvement would be helpful.
I think he's also part of the Chamber of Commerce, which I think is important because that's the business stakeholders that are hard to reach at any other time too.
And I would say community involvement isn't just reaching out into the community and being a part of them, but bringing the community into what we do. And that's what Richard, I think, has been good at. We have citizens on master plan committees, on bond oversight committees. And that's what drew me to the district years and years ago, was being on these committees and having an active say-so in a lot of what the schools do.
Okay. So bring the communication into the district? Mr. Walker, you had mentioned something earlier that was not only local community, but statewide community involvement. Would that be something you all might think of here as you're looking at this category, this quality?
I think that that'd be important, especially we have like the Superintendent's Association, collaboration with the School Board Association. I mean, these are groups we're all going to have to work together, coming together here to advocate for students in the future. So we certainly want somebody that's engaged on the state as well as community level.
Right, and just to add what Mike said a while ago, we're the state capital. So we have when session's in, it's in right here in our town. So having somebody that's actively attends those and, again, involved locally, but at the state level.
And I would also like to add, or just for maybe clarification, so community involvement does include the district staff, right?
Yes, and that would,
So getting input from the staff, from the employees within the district.
thank you for the,
Involving the district in the decision-making.
thank you for that clarification. So here, when we're talking about bringing the community into the district, that is your community. Everyone here within the community, parents, I was going to say employees of any other business, but yeah, your community, all stakeholders.
Challenge just because there are pockets of parents that are harder to reach. Families living in extreme poverty, they might not be able to engage in community forums. And so I don't know how we want to say it, but it's almost like an outreach effort to get to all of the stakeholders. I mean, really stress the all, because it's going to take a little bit of extra effort to reach families who speak different languages, live in poverty, work 2-3 jobs to support themselves to live in a city like this.
Okay. Are you beginning to have a picture in your mind? Who you're looking for? Honesty. We've talked much about that when we already, but let's just narrow down that definition or that thought around honesty.
I really think it's pretty self-explanatory, I don't know how else to say it. You want somebody who is honest, not only when they communicate with people, but just the way they deal with the staff, that they're honest with them, that they tell them the truth, they don't beat around the bush, that type of thing. Fiscally, they got to be honest fiscally. So I think it goes without saying, honesty goes across the board of everything that the superintendent may be involved with.
And I think being honest, sometimes, you want people when they talk to you and you speak to them, that they know they can rely on your word, but also recognizing that things change, things are dynamic. And so when you have a situation where a decision is made or needs to be made, but then for some reason, maybe the direction has to change a little bit, being open and honest in your communication as to things did need to change and here's why. So there's no confusion. We didn't just change it because you walked away and we said,
Enough.
but making sure people are comfortable that things are dynamic, things are fluid, and we want to make sure you're aware of how the decisions were made. I think honesty falls into that
Extends in
category as
there
well.
as well. I see head nods, good.
I still
Does
really
someone-
just think this is part of integrity. I mean, I really think that
It is.
instead of a
Big
stand
cloud.
aside, it could be just put into our explanation of integrity.
So let's move to morality. They do fall under, they can be bullet points under integrity, but
I don't know.
Well, I think morality, you're following the laws, you're following the policies and regulations of the board, you're following, I don't know. I mean, I think that this is something that I think is also pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
it is, but it isn't. And you need to articulate it so that you all have the same understanding of what that means.
And I'd say almost morality is when you're representing the district, don't do anything that's going to embarrass us. Don't make this school district look bad. Don't make this board hang our head in shame because we're getting ready to come and talk in front of the public. So, I mean, I think that that's huge, and that's a big part of morality.
So it's okay to go out and drink with your buddies, but don't get a DUI. And I'm not saying, I don't mean to mean that lightly. It's okay, because that was just an example you meant
Well-
lightheartedly. But it's not the action of that, that's the morality part that you're looking at. It's the after effect of that hanging your head is because of the DUI or because of something that occurred from those actions. Is that
I
really?
would say it's that. I'd say that it's knowing appropriate humor. If you're doing a community forum, we don't want jokes that are going to offend the family. You know what I mean? I think it's that and a lot more. It's conducting yourself professionally and morally. So what would a reasonable person consider to be appropriate for a school superintendent to do in public?
Good?
I think so. I mean, I kind of fall back to conducting yourself in a reasonable and responsible manner that reflects positively on the district and the students you represent.
Great.
I think very simply, what I'd be looking for is someone who is a good person overall.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I think we all know what a good person is. Yeah. I
So-
didn't catch that either.
I was saying you're making this hard, so if morality's hard to define, good is even more challenging. It's very
Well,
subjective.
I think we all know in our own mind what a good person is. You know.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to define, but I think we all know what a good person is.
And maybe you'll know what isn't if it was presented through whatever. So the last is a responsive decision maker. I don't know if I added, oh no, that was, I did. I added that, I'm sorry, that should have been on that side. Responsive decision maker, under decision making. But I don't know that we really, responsive, I think, Mr. Walker, you had brought that one up, responsive decision maker. Tell us a little more, because I'm not sure we really talked about that in the decision maker piece.
Well, Laurel actually kind of stole my thinking about it. It's kind of, being able to right the ship in a storm and stay the course. So make a decision when you need to make a decision, and then, stick in there. You might have to pivot. You might have to problem
Adjust the
solve.
sails, sorry.
There you go.
See, Laurel, that's why we have you on this board. Editing and great ideas.
Okay. So you have now painted a picture of the person you're looking for. And I just want to take a minute, have you all go through, look at these, look at the little highlights of what that is. Because as now we move from these characters, these qualities that you're looking for, we're going to start getting into the process. So I just want to give you 30 seconds to I know we've just spent a lot of time on it, but take 30 seconds and really put that in your thought. This is who you're looking for. Oh, I just did. Okay. Well, there, I had that one open for that. Find the right one. So let's think for a moment. You good? So we're going to get into thinking about some of the, why can't I need my glasses, I'm sorry, wait one second. The salaries of what you might be offering.
Can we go back?
Sure.
And I'm wondering, now that we have that list, I feel like the next step is developing a job description or a statement of a
Okay, we
vision
can do
of
that.
what we're
We can do
looking
that
for
now
type
in,
thing.
in lieu of, sure. Let me get here.
I was wondering, are we going to get any applicants? Does this person exist?
Well, I know you have one of them.
I was envisioning a cape and a big
I
S.
almost said it. So let's talk about the job description.
Do you have sample drafts of job descriptions for superintendents that you've already put out, and we could see what we like and
I do
modify?
indeed, and let me see if I can find it, if I have the right one open. So I started with, if you can see, let me just put these in. I cheated and started for you, and I just have to put them here so you can see. This is from several districts in the state. Have you had an opportunity to look at them? We can go a bullet at a time, revise as needed, add as needed, take away as needed, thinking back to where we came. Have you all had an opportunity to see those?
Deb,
also?
can you? I can read it fine on my monitor, but I see people standing. Can you enlarge it a little bit?
Deb, just a question I have too, just because I don't know how the superintendent endorsement works. Would someone who is not currently a superintendent have the superintendent endorsement? Or what type of eligibility would they need to get that? How long does that process take?
If they have their a superintendent, if they have their credential, administrative credential that has that, whether they're in-state or out-of-state, if they're in-state, they may already have that credential on their license. If they're coming from out-of-state, typically they'll have that on their license and they'll have the, they would apply then. Some states we have some reciprocity with, but they would have to be, well, recently it took about a month for that license to come through on a recently new superintendent here in our state.
Would you, and I appreciate that definition and that question because I was thinking about that and not having a good grasp of what it takes. I think about in my line of work as an engineer, just because you're eligible for licensure, it could take a while. So does it make sense to say eligibility within a certain amount of time? Or is that not so much necessary?
But I mean,
Given the
do we want
process.
to limit, the Department of Education, depending on when it is, can be historically slow at processing things like that. And I would hate to filter out a qualified candidate because they're coming from out of state. We don't know how long the state's going to take. I think usually a district, our HR person could say, we need to get this expedited. And we could typically get that process pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I just, through various factors, it can take a while. But, we heard this weekend about how we've been fortunate, but the normal tenure of a superintendent it's not a very long lifespan. And I'd hate to think that we get a superintendent that, it takes them 18 months to get their credential. I don't know if that's a ridiculously long amount of time or if we should even be concerned about that. I see your point and I agree with you. I just want to make sure we have something that says you have to get it within a reasonable amount of time.
My question would be, I'm sorry, Deb,
Oh, there it
is if someone has an administrative license or certification, whatever they call it, how long would it take or what steps do they need to do to obtain a superintendent certification? I mean, is it more education, a matter of just applying for a
Steve
endorsement?
Barner, I think Mr. Stokes is trying to weigh in on this.
He might know something about this.
Thank you, Mr. Cassiopo, members of the board. Typically, in the state of Nevada, you've got to hold an administrative credential, and in order to get that, you have to hold a master's degree. I think in other places that I've seen, there's been a requirement the individual has a PhD or an ed specialist certificate. I think that limits the number of people that you can consider if you do that. I don't have a PhD, but I have the ability to be a superintendent in the state of Nevada because I have a master's degree in education, and that's required in order to be a principal or to be a superintendent. So I don't really think that there would be many people applying for the job with only a 4-year degree that maybe has been a former teacher or has been or is a teacher. There would take that additional step because within that master's degree program, you are studying ed finance, you're studying instruction and curriculum, you're studying employee relations, all of those things that typically come with a job as a superintendent. So I think it can be limiting if you desire a higher degree, but there are a number of us in the state of Nevada that have a master's degree that seem to have been able to do the job, as it were.
No, I appreciate that. So at that point, if you have that, then you fill out your application to the state, and it takes a certain amount of time to get, but you have everything you need to get it. It's just a matter of waiting for them to process your application, if you will. And I'm good with that. I just want to make sure.
And I'd invite Dr.
we
would- Understood
Belfin to add to that if his experience has been different than mine, just in terms of the experiences he's had with people applying in our district for administrative positions.
Evening, trustees. Jose Delphin for the record. Mr. Stokes is absolutely right. In the state of Nevada, there's not a separate license to be a superintendent. In other states, there is. Typically, that additional license has to do with extra coursework. Doesn't necessarily mean a doctorate. Just means, like in our state, there's a family engagement class that in Nevada Constitution and Nevada school law that all teachers must have to be fully licensed if they're coming from out of state. So superintendent's license typically isn't required here in Nevada. Other states it is, which alludes to additional, like I said, other coursework that that state has for their own standards. So in Nevada, Mr. Stokes is absolutely right. Just need your educational administration master's degree from any college that is accredited. And once you get that license along, typically with your teaching license, you're good to go. That helps.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I would say then we wouldn't want to ask for an endorsement that doesn't exist in the state of Nevada.
I would agree.
Mr. Stokes, do you see anything that might be missing on this that you see that you've needed while in this job?
Appropriate ones, those are okay.
Thank you for the question. I think that this truly is that time when, and we heard it this last weekend, when the board has the right to introduce any characteristic or quality or condition that would be part of what you see as your employee. So this really is that time for you to interject anything. I think these are all great topics and concepts. So I would just give that back to the board and say if there's something that you don't see that you think is missing, then we probably ought to talk about it. But I think as a general list, this list is very good.
Deb, can I go down a couple bullets? Your demonstrated ability in business practices, I wanted to get some clarification from you. What types of abilities came to your mind when you put this together?
Thank you. Much as you've talked about some of the qualities and talking about fiscal responsibility is having an understanding of what a superintendent is the CEO of a very large budget and a very large employee group. And so without having some sort of an understanding of those business concepts of how the district runs as a business, that's why that's there. It really is.
Yeah.
We think educational leader, and we spoke a lot about that. But I believe it was also mentioned as we were talking about that they understood the business of education, and that really is what's here. So as you're looking at questions and you're looking at your candidates, is listening for that kind of experience or what they might have done or to show that they have some knowledge of that. That's where that's
Yeah.
coming from.
And I appreciate that. I mean, because I think that's important. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a piece to that I was missing.
Yeah, okay.
So Joe, and I'm thinking, you could be talking, like Laurel brought up grants, a knowledge of carryover and what is allowable for grant funds. What are the laws on procuring contracts? And, you know what I mean, that knowledge, we don't want to have to train somebody those basic things that we want the person to be able to
Agreed.
come in and hit the ground running.
Yeah, I agree. Good, thank you.
So I also think that we need to recognize that our district is very diverse. I believe almost 50% of our student population is diverse. So I think we definitely want someone with experience on how we can serve our students. Or enhance our ways of serving our students, because we're doing a good job, but there's always room to grow in recognizing that our student demographic is changing. We need to have someone with that experience.
Experience with
Say
diverse
something-
student
Yeah,
populations?
that's what I was going to say.
Would the word inclusivity, is that a word you would like in there? I was thinking of it as you were talking. I don't want to add it if it's not what you were thinking.
What does that look like?
So in my way of thinking is we want to have the next superintendent be able to expand on how we are serving our diverse student population. Mr. Stokes has done a really good job in laying the foundation with initiatives that we got going. We want to see that our new superintendent continues expanding off in making sure that we are serving the needs of our diverse students.
I see it as looking for a superintendent who has experience with English language learner programs, who has experience with a high poverty student population, has experience with, our poverty level is quite high in this district as well, and we have a high population of English learners throughout, in comparison to some states. Some districts don't have, they have literally less than 20 English learners. So I would want someone who has more experience with that.
And I'm thinking, just, Deb, looking at what you captured, I think the part that's missing is it's almost that proactive approach to full community engagement, or does that make sense? It's the next step of not just having the experience, but actually having the ability and interest in getting in and getting all families involved. Is that correct,
I would just
Lupe?
say, yeah, I would just add getting new ideas, perhaps, getting, bring in new ideas to help us grow.
Just getting,
That sentence is getting a little lost.
I want to make sure we don't pigeonhole ourselves too much. I want to
Yeah,
keep it open.
yeah. So
I
I'm
agree
wondering,
with where we're going. I just want to keep it.
well, and I wonder if we, experience with an ability to provide, to improve educational opportunities for a diverse population of students.
That's good.
Or just ability.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to put experience. I think if you have the ability, you probably have the experience, but we can spell it out.
Experience and maybe proven ability.
Before you get done, the top one, you started editing it and we pushed it down, and I think that it's probably more eligible for licensure as a administrator in Nevada, since there's not a specific endorsement for that, just so we're consistent.
Whoops, I lost the rest of it. Sorry. It might seem redundant to have the master's degree or other advanced degree, but in this situation, we want them to know that's,
Right.
we have somebody that's looking at this from Connecticut. We want them to know that,
Agreed.
it's right there for them. Yeah. And removing that, really, it was more in that advertisement wording, so that they know that that's what you're looking for at that level, although it is a superintendent search that they're looking at. But that was the purpose of that prior. So
Just, I feel like we need to figure out with our verbs and the way that we're doing it to be consistent, because we've got holds and demonstrate and then demonstrated and then have, and so we need to make them consistent, and I'm not
Well,
sure
and
which one we want to go with.
I think
but-
we can do that. I'd kind
but
of
I
like to
think
get the
that
ideas
we
down
can
first,
do that
and then we
editing
can
after
wordsmith
before we
it.
send it out,
Yeah.
so we're
Earlier, I heard that along with leadership experience, teaching experience is something that we value. So maybe in that 1, 2, 3, third bullet down, it's after or comparable leadership experience, somehow adding in with teaching experience. And then we can talk about, if you want, how much, but some classroom experience is what I heard was important to the board.
And I'm kind of interested with teaching experience, public school teaching experience. And I think that it could be, I don't want to say just at this level, I think it could be at the elementary, middle school, or high school level, but I think we certainly want somebody with public school experience.
Go up to the third bullet, cumulative of at least 5 years of superintendent, principal, or central office experience. Is that the threshold that you all are comfortable with? Would you like to change that, lower it, raise it?
I think 5 years in the life of a administrator goes real quick. I don't think we'd want to go much less.
Right. I agree, because when we have that at 5 years and then we say some teaching experience, that quickly becomes, half a career right there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Dad, forgive my ignorance, but central office, what position would that be?
Those could be a director position. They could be a coordinator, an administrative position within the central office or the district office.
Well, you need to add district office.
Yeah, I think district too, because we don't refer to it as central, I don't think.
we use district. From your experience, is district pretty widely used throughout, since we're advertising broad?
Yeah, district office, central office, they're
They mean
really
the same-
rather,
To me, they mean the same thing, but,
they're rather interchangeable.
yeah, okay.
But you do call it district office here,
We
so
do
that
here,
would be.
yeah. Okay.
I'm just wondering, and I'm basing this on the fact that I've heard that there's a lot of superintendent positions open throughout the country at this time. Do we want to say preferred with that, just in case there's someone with 4.5 years that maybe we're like wanting to consider? I'd hate to exclude someone if the pool is too tight.
It makes me a little bit worried, and I could see your point. I mean, when we're filtering people out, I certainly want to get the experience. I think these are tough times in education, and I think we need, like, we have benefited from having Mr. Stokes' experience these last 2 years, whereas it could have been an especially trying time, and we were able to put some policies in place and do our best with minimal disruptions. I could see your point. I worry about it though also.
Trustee Crossman, I might say 5 years is a a good beginning point
Right.
for the size of your district, some of the things that we're looking for coming in. Having that type of experience, my recommendation would leave it at 5.
Because you're talking cumulative too, so they could be a principal, a district office person, or other leadership for those 5 years, not necessarily a superintendent.
No, it says, those are all your options,
Years experience
is how
of-
I read it.
Okay, so it could be and/or.
Correct.
Any of those, okay.
Which
Yeah,
is,
because you could potentially have somebody with 8 years' experience that just stands out and they've never been a superintendent. But they've been, they've been an executive, district person.
which is why I didn't put the teaching experience in that line, because they could have 4 years of teaching experience and 1 year at the district
Right.
office.
Right.
Mr. Stokes, do you have any opinion about experience level when we're talking years of experience? Do you have a reaction either way to that?
Thank you, Mr. Walker, members of the board. There certainly is a difference in running a school. There's also a difference in operating a department that might be district-wide. I think, however, that a person with any of that kind of experience, as long as they have a mindset of work, and as long as they have the mindset of really being committed to the district, I think they can learn those things. And we have some tremendously successful individuals within our district that have that knowledge. When I first started as a superintendent, I did not have the specific knowledge of many of the things, and I learned as I went. And I was fortunate to sit at the feet of those people that did have the knowledge and the skills. And there's also folks that will be this person, the new person's colleague and peers that have great experience around the district. We're a small state in terms of having key individuals that can give us guidance and help. We're fortunate. NASB provides some great oversight, and being right here in Carson City, we live right next door, just down the road from the State Department of Education, and those folks guide us and help us. So I think as long as we're looking for that individual that has a mindset of learning, typically somebody with an advanced degree has committed themselves to education. They've also learned a lot about the business in general, and then you have the specific conditions with any individual school district that will come as a matter of working inside that community of learners.
So then, Laurel, I guess I'd support your suggestion for preferred, and then have a little bit of flexibility.
We're changing preferred cumulative of 5 years.
Okay, yeah, you could do it there, or you could do it at the end, but either spot, I
Right.
think, works.
Yeah, which would you prefer, front or back?
I think the end would work a little better. It's a little more subtle at the end.
Make them dig for it.
With this bullet point, possesses personal integrity, self-confidence, and flexibility. Those aren't all words that you all have used as we were looking at this. Do they fit? Would you like any of them changed? Now, this is, yours. This was a, starting block.
Well, I'd say to be successful, they're certainly going to need all three of those characteristics.
And then we can add patience and, no, I'm kidding.
Honesty and integrity.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know if it makes a difference, but probably if I was writing that sentence, I would have said possess personal and professional integrity.
Trustee Crossman, you were talking about verbs at the beginning?
Had it on and then off. I'm just wondering, because we've got have a proven record, which seems different than holds, because holds is a singular person, and have is a plural person. So would it be has a proven record, possess, or possesses? What do we want to use as our
I like have,
undisclosed pronoun?
I like has over have in this particular
Okay.
case.
And that makes it a singular.
Yeah.
Holds. Do you want demonstrated or demonstrated? Demonstrates.
Demonstrates. And then communicates.
And shows. Possesses. I know that's.
Holds is okay? Holds a valid? That's more than has. I mean, it's a little different
Yeah,
terminology.
that's fine.
Sorry, did you hear those?
Oh, no.
Shows commitment down under, and possesses.
Here?
No, down a few more
Under,
bullets.
right
Oh,
there.
thank you. Okay.
And then possesses. And then I don't know, experience to improve. You could do has experience.
What do you guys think about where it says master's degree, other advanced degree from an accredited college or university?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good catch.
The other one has the ability to establish a climate of high expectations for the Board of Trustees, school staff, parents, students, and community. How, I'm not going to say this politically correct, but how do you get someone that improves your student achievement results and stuff on the backs of staff, so you end up having, like in other districts, of course not ours, but you have a 5-star school, but you have staff leaving in Grove because of the leadership.
And maybe it's with a growth mindset. So it's not just a cut score. You know what I mean? That we're looking for student growth.
I think that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Ramirez. When we're thinking about that leadership, it's the ability to create that environment of of an environment, I'll say much like you have going on now. I mean, this is the best example. I actually use your district as an example for many things because of the nature of inclusivity that everyone feels a part of the community. Everybody has a voice here. And that is it's a high expectation to find someone with the leadership skills and the proven leadership skills to be able to come in and build those relationships, build, excuse me, the ownership of where things are going and how they're going to improve or change or continue, that it's not an authoritarian type of a leadership. It's really, as Mr. Walker said, it's a growth mindset, and it's bringing that with them. It's that type of leadership. So it's not on the backs of teachers. It's supporting them so they understand the value that they have to be able to continue and want to grow.
Right, so, but how do you state that in this? I understand that, but how do you state that?
How do you state that? I think you're going to, what will happen is you'll hear that when you are interviewing the candidates, you'll hear their experiences and the things that they share of how they do things, how they've done that, how they've built it. So while this is an expectation you have of this new leader coming in, that's something they're going to know, hey, I've got to really be able to let them know how I've done this. So you may have 4 candidates that are really focusing on that, and you're going to be able to hear from those candidates that have the qualities that you're looking for, but now they're showing you how they've demonstrated that through the responses to the questions that you ask. And then in that second part of the interviews where we're down to a top 2, and they're bringing now their presentations to you, they're really now defining for you how they've been a leader and how they have done these things.
And I do think that's something, for me, one of the questions that's important is incorporating that ability to flush that out. How are you going to do that without riding the backs of all these people? How do you do that in a collaborative way that not only generates academic and all the other achievements we're looking for, but also promotes some continuity? And, I think if you're burning your staff out, you're not going to be able to get all the other things you want. So you got to find a balanced way to do
Well,
this.
and I think we have to be careful with that because it's not just the superintendent that does that.
That's right.
We, as the Board of Trustees, have a responsibility in that area. And I could think back to meetings where Ms. Fuson was getting a little beat up by some of us.
Right.
And I remember saying, let's back off here. It's not quite appropriate. And so, I think that tone is something that, regardless of whoever we hire, that's going to be an expectation of ours to set that tone as the employer.
Yeah, agreed. That doesn't just fall to 1 or 2 entities. Yeah.
You said it before, collaborative climate maybe would be a good place to put that.
Like that? If I could spell it right? They're
I
cool,
like
man.
collaborative.
Collaborative. Whew.
You better take it and run, Deb.
Okay. See heads shaking? Very good. All right.
I think we're okay.
All right. So you have your qualities. Now you have your outline of expectations, what you're looking for as we move forward. So now you know who you're looking for, what you're looking for. Now we need to define what are some of the other parts of that. And if we go looking to, first of all, is determining the salary range. And let me pull this part up.
What's the going rate?
I'm trying to pull it up just a sec. Did I get it? What happened here? So there's a range. The median for Nevada superintendents is $175,000, and that's a median. Most recently, the last 3 superintendents that have filled positions in the state, they brought their salaries up anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000, depending on which district they were and where they were, to bring the salaries to a more current level of pay for superintendents. You are currently at 178, and the closest comparison here in the state would be Elko at 180. And I will tell you, when they brought in their superintendent a year ago, they raised it $20,000 within their cap to be within their range to be able to offer that.
Did they raise that prior to the interview process, or did that come about as through negotiations?
That final number came through negotiations. It fell within the range that they created, which is what we're going to talk about here. This isn't the precise number, but it is the range that they came with. They've had some situations since then, and will continue moving forward. So you right now are thinking of a range. This is not here is what we're going to offer you, this is what the job is, because you may have somebody with 5 years of experience, you may have somebody coming in with 10 years of experience. You don't know who that is, but what we do know is you want to have a range that's going to invite a highly qualified candidate to come in.
And is that salary and benefits, or that's just salary?
That salary.
That's just salary.
And then include that, and then the benefits package would be on top of that. Typically. That's up to you, how you all want to do that.
I think it'd be helpful to also, I'm looking on Transparent Nevada right now, but just to have an idea, because we have some districts that are comparable in size right nearby us with Lyon and Douglas, and getting an idea of that would also, I think, help us get their ranges. I'm not able to pull it up right now because I had to promise not to use it for any bad reasons, and I can't get it there yet.
Well, and I'll just remind you that we had a situation where Mr. Stokes was making less than some superintendents with less experience in smaller districts. And so we had to make that adjustment. And so I think that is something to consider. This is a high achieving district, and I think we want to maintain that, which is going to mean that we want a quality person in this position.
Well, and I don't think we're in a situation where nor do we want to, for lack of a better term, lowball anybody. I think we want a fair, competitive salary, because people, looking in from the outside, they're going to look at that. They're going to look at what's the superintendent and the surrounding communities make, what's the cost of living, those kinds of things. And when you only have 17 districts in your state, you can look at like a Clark County, and I don't know what that salary is, but it probably bumps up quite a bit. So your average, that's where I think the range is important, because you might want to, without going crazy, you want to span
So Joe,
a reasonable range.
I would propose maybe we start with the median being, so the 175 to 200,000, depending on experience. And then that's a part that Ryan and probably the board president will negotiate with that person that is selected.
Yeah, admittedly, that was a little higher than I was going to go, but I understand that. And in negotiations, you could structure those contracts however you want. After a certain amount of time, you may see an increase kind of thing. But I think that's probably close to a reasonable range. I was probably realistically, I was thinking 162, and I didn't really have a high end yet.
Just for a reference point, what is Mr. Stokes' contract right now, salary-wise?
Yeah, is it that high? I thought it was 169 for some reason.
I earn right now 178 is my
It is 178.
annual salary.
And you've had this position for how many years?
This is my 14th year.
And keep in mind, he has not gotten steady pay increases either. He's been very, very, very good to us, to be honest with you.
I know, and that kind of, I don't know, I wish I could talk better today. Mondays are bad for me. What kind of precedents that sets? Because if they look at what we've done with our past superintendent, it kind of makes them think, if we start this one off at a higher level after our superintendent's been there for 14 years.
But I'll
You know what I
just,
mean?
I'll just stress that we're going to be competing. The two biggest districts in the state are looking for superintendents. We have several small that we know of right now. We're one of two or three that's looking for a superintendent, could be more. And then all throughout the nation, there are tons of openings. I mean, we're going to have to be competitive to get the quality of candidate we want. I think that's what we have to be careful about is, you know, I think we'd all be happy if Mr. Stokes wanted to stay and we could adjust his pay.
I understand that
I
too,
think we
but
could
I think
adjust it enough.
there's a big difference between working here than working in Clark or working in Washoe and working with those entities. I think that has to be part of the play too. I don't think we're
But-
bottom of the barrel kind
But
of
we're not
job.
anywhere near there. They're $200,000 and $300,000.
Well, I
mean,
know,
that's-
I know that. I'm not,
I think we got to look at our housing costs are fairly high right now. We have a 6.2% inflation right now, the last I heard.
And if you keep in mind, if you look at CEOs, even in our area, for a variety of different companies, you know, you look at a firm that employs over 500 people and we employ well over that. That's a lot of folks to manage, and those kinds of positions do warrant, you know, salaries that we, you know, that we may think are a little at our high end. But in light of all that and where Mr. Stokes is at, I mean, quite frankly, the 175 to 200 range seems reasonable. And that gives us, that's quite a bit of flexibility to base it on experience.
And, you know, one thing I just want us all to keep in mind, we're going to have very high expectations. I know from my personal experience, whenever I go to an event in the district, Mr. Stokes is typically there before me and still there when I leave.
Right.
And sometimes those are things that aren't even associated with the school district. So, I mean, we're going to expect that same level of involvement from the person we hire. It's a thankless job that requires a lot of hours.
So I found on Transparent Nevada that Jesus Jara for Clark County makes regular pay $318,000 plus his benefits. It totals up to like $436,000 with all his benefits. I can look up Kristen McNeil next and see. I don't think we're comparable to those districts in
No.
size and scope, but just throwing it out there for your information.
And Washoe County is over 200,000.
Right.
So Laurel, I would look at Washoe or Lyon and, you know what I mean?
I did. Wayne Workman's at 178.
I was just going to tell you that, yeah.
And I looked up Keith Lewis, but it only has him from when he was the Director of Human Resources, not from being the superintendent. So it was 127 when he was Director of Human Resources. I don't know what the superintendent one is.
Historically, I have learned in Nevada that superintendent salaries are below a national average of, much like most things, but below a national average of a salary for the position.
I know we're in a competitive market. I understand that. But I guess what I'm struggling with is, we have a superintendent, 14 years' experience in the district, with a lot of other experience, and we're paying him 178. And we potentially may be looking at someone who has no superintendent experience to hire, and yet we're gonna offer him or her potentially the same salary or above what we're paying our current superintendent. That's kind of what I'm struggling with. I'm not saying it's right, but that's my struggle right now.
No, that's valid.
We could start the lower range lower, and it's still gonna depend on negotiations, what it ends up. If you want to put it at 165, 160, something like that, that would be a range.
I would say 160 would be very low.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we would want to go much below 170. And I mean, certainly the size of our district, we at least should be at the median range. I mean, things are just more expensive right now, but we want a good superintendent. I don't want somebody to say, I'm not doing that job for blank. You know what I'm saying?
What about 170 to 210? These are a range. This is just a range.
Yeah, maybe 210 in my mind is a little bit high, but I think we do probably have to have some kind of range in there, but I'm more in the range of, I could live with 170 to maybe 190 or something like that.
I think we want to hit 200. I don't really care if it's 200 or 210. I think if someone's going to get hung up over that, there may be other issues we have with that person.
And chances are their experience isn't going to quite rise to that level, I would
Right.
guess.
I can tell you if it was me and I was applying, and I won't be because I'm not qualified. Yeah, I probably would not want to come in at the high end. I'd want to come in kind of mid-range and feel things out, but then I would have an expectation that if I'm meeting my
Yeah, then-
expectations, I'm going to see a salary increase in a
Yeah,
period of time that we agree to.
So we would put it from a certain bottom range to a top range based upon experience?
Correct.
And the actual number will be based on negotiations.
So I've heard 170 to 210, 175 to 200, start at 170 or 175,
How about we compromise 205, 170 to 205?
170 to 205.
That's fine.
Mr. President,
Sure.
if I could interrupt for just a minute, just so the record's really, really clear. We keep talking throughout the night about consensus on issues, and I just want it to be clear to everybody listening or in the public that no item has actually been approved. There is going to be action at the end of this item. Public will have a chance to comment, and there's no fiscal impact today to the items being discussed. We're not actually approving an expenditure of this money. It's just an amount to inform negotiations.
No, good. Thank you for that clarification.
And since this is a salary, AJ, do you have any comment on what we can afford here?
We can afford 170.
Yeah, we can go 178.
It's
There-
one employee, I realize it's just one
Right.
person impact.
I think that's important to keep in mind. It's one employee, so it's not as impactful across the broad spectrum of almost 1,200 total employees in the district. But clearly, we'll make work what you need to work, even if I'm eating ramen noodle for. No, we'll make. Yeah, we'll make it work.
Not
Guess
that
this
mine
is-
helps, but I'll help you too.
Reasonable to you.
I mean, I think everything Dr. Oliver has discussed and Trustee Crossman has brought up with the salary ranges is everything I know of. As Dr. Oliver said, on a national level, comparably, these are very reasonable. So I think for Nevada, what we're looking at is reasonable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. You will be taking action on these later.
Right.
Which would be the salary range right now I have as 170 to 205. Thoughts, questions, comments so far? What'd you say? Keep rolling? All right, let's get to our, we're just going to go through some process right now. And I think the fastest and easiest way to do this, I'll take this down and I'm just going to take some notes, is the process, as we look at this, at the process, and the thing for this process, and I'll restate this for us all, is for you to focus on the candidates and their qualifications and who you are looking for, and follow the process so that it's not the process you're focusing on as you're interviewing and as you're going through. You're able to really look at the candidates, their qualifications, who they are, what they bring to the table, and leave the process to us, and you're going to fill in. So I'm going to go through part of the process now with you so that it's set up. We eventually could do rehearsal types of interviews when we get there, should you desire. We don't have to, but we're here to support you in this journey. So the first thing to ask or to think of is the typical number of applicants that a board would receive would be the top 4 applicants that that apply. That the team, the NASB team will go through looking at all of the qualifications that you are looking for, weeding through, going through and following the rubric that's here for the team that is looking at that and bringing those top 4 to you. Is 4 an acceptable number of applicants? Would you like 3? Would you like 5? Typically is 4.
I have 2 questions. So I would suggest at least 5 just because of the way people drop out sometimes. But, I served on a couple different vice presidential and presidential search committees at the college level. And one of the things that we would do is we would rank the applicants privately. So like we would schedule time and go in this office and go through them and rank our top candidates. And then that was used to pare the list down. And I guess this is as much a question for Ryan as for you. Could we set a process like that up for us, since we're not collaborating amongst ourselves? We're doing it individually, and then Deb would synthesize the information, and maybe Deb and Renee type deal?
Yes. I think the process would be similar to filling out confidential superintendent evaluations, for lack of a better term, by setting up the parameters that are going to inform the interview process. You guys have been discussing several things. So, for example, if you approve a job description today that includes a master's degree and a certain amount of work experience, you have a rubric that's going to allow you to individually evaluate that. And if those are factors that would eliminate an applicant from consideration, or, if based on NASB's review of not only the rubric, but each individual board member's scoring without any collaboration with the board members themselves, then that could be used by the hired contractor to present to you a final list of applicants to be interviewed. The decision will be up to the board if they want to see the rest, or if they're satisfied with the panel that's been presented. If you want to see more, you can tell them, I want to see more. If you're satisfied with the panel that you have, then you can proceed. But the short answer to your question is yes, you can adopt a process like that.
And thank you for that, Mr. Russell. The process that, as we will move forward, is the team, our superintendent search team goes through a process very similar to what you've described. There is a rubric that is somewhat developed, which you see. It will be revised somewhat to match some of these qualifications that you have, so that is it's somewhat generic. And then it's personalized after this meeting so that it reflects your thoughts and wishes, so that you're utilizing that rubric as you are looking at candidates. We will look at that rubric. Let's just say there's 20 candidates that actually apply for the position. A blind score goes through of each one of the candidates individually by the team of 5 that look at this, and goes through the rubric and rank scores them. The top, and that's the paper version of that first version of that ranking. We then call each one of them and have conversations with them and really dig in to look at hearing things that we might hear of the qualities, the qualifications, and everything there. We also call their references and have been known to call others that aren't references. That might be because we are not you, but we do call and we'll ask, well, as we're talking to them, hey, is there anybody else we might want to talk to or anything? We do the whole Google search, all the things that you're going to do, reference newspapers from where they are, to bringing forward the top candidates so that they have we've checked them out and are presenting to you the top 4 or 5 candidates that you are looking for. From there, the process goes to a initial interview of questions that we'll come to today that match the different areas of the rubric. So there's consensus of an idea, much of what we did today, talking about those qualities. And you'll each have an opportunity to ask a question or two of the candidates, utilizing the rubric, but also then taking what you know and feel about somebody, and you will rank score, utilizing all of that information, those candidates. You do that on your own. You come back to a meeting where you present your ideas about each one of the top of the candidates, and you come up with your top 2 candidates. Those top 2 after, and that all goes through a regular board meeting or a special board meeting for those discussions around your rankings that you have, and come with the top 2. The top 2 will come back and present to you based on a scenario. You might also have some additional questions that you would like to ask. Those questions and the scenario will be the same for each one of the top 2 candidates. And at that time, you'll have time to, again, go do your thinking, come back together, and have that second dialogue around those top 2 candidates and see which one comes out on top that you would offer the position to. During that second round of interviews would be an opportunity for each one to have a tour of the district, meet with different groups within the community, have some coffee talk, I don't know what, have some different opportunities to meet with different administrators, meet with the cabinet, and just, allow them the opportunity to get to know the district. It's as much as who you think is a good fit, but we also want to make sure that who is being presented knows and understands the community very well. So in the conversations we have, we tell them everything we can about the community, maybe the highs, the lows, the goods, the bads, the area, the surrounding communities, things that are going on in the state, things that are going on legislatively. Understanding, obviously, they need to do a quick deep dive into the new student funding model. And so they're doing their work on the district, and we work with them to try and understand where they're coming as well. So during that second interview, they'll have their things. They may have a tour of the district. You have interviews, and after the day or 2 of however that goes, you will then come together and have that your own ranking and discussion on which candidate you choose, and that's the process.
So explain to me who the 5 people are. Yeah, the NASB.
Who are the 5 people on our team? I'm one. Michelle Robison is one. Deb Darby. Sue Kima. And ex-superintendent Ann McCulloch, who is an ex-superintendent from California.
You know, this is a big decision for our community, and I would just feel much more at ease with the trustees coming to that top consensus. Just,
So you
Yeah.
would like to have all of the applicants coming?
well, I'd like the screening process, I would like the trustees to go through the rubric and kind of get down to their top however many people we decide on. I mean, I think we're much more of a hands-on board. We work closely with our superintendent, and we know this community, and I think we could probably get a sense from different applications and way things are worded that this feels like a good fit. This one might not be. You know what I'm saying? It's just,
Sure.
I trust our judgment in that area, and I would really love for us to do that process.
Laurel?
Sorry, Mr. President. Trustee Walker, if the process you were just talking about is a little different than the question before, I think if you wanted the board to actually review applicants and fill out the rubric, they could do that in a special meeting without actually having an in-person interview, but it would be the most transparent way to do it in an open meeting, go through the applicants, if that's what you want to do, and direct which 5 or 4 or whatever you want to invite back for the initial interview, but you could certainly do that, and it would be in line with the open meeting law.
I definitely also like the NASB group. I know there's some really good people in that group. I think that would be very important for you guys as well to look at that. I don't want to take that away. You know what I mean?
I think I do.
I think that was my fault, sorry.
I don't want to eliminate that part of it. Maybe we can add on where
Okay.
we're doing some stuff as well.
One of the ways I see it is that NASB can look at the initial applications. The NASB team could then verify who has provided accurate information, and do, they're not going to do an in-depth background check on everyone, but to have that. I do like to give us that general consensus, but I do like the idea of us as trustees being able to rank the applicants rather than just be given the top 4, I would like to have us to take part in ranking them. I feel like as a trustee, I don't want to be left with and it could be 4 or 5 because maybe you get down to a top 3 rather than a top 2, but I don't want us to feel like we weren't presented with a good candidate who applied. I'd like us to be able to know that.
See, I guess what I'm used to in my previous life is personnel would go through the applicants, see who actually met the minimum qualifications for the job, who didn't, and then they'd weed those out, and then we'd get a list of, they'd rank them, and then we'd interview the top 5. So, I mean, if we get 20 applicants, we could potentially be in for a lot of work if we went through each and every one of them. I'd like to see NASB be able to weed out at least the ones that don't meet the minimum qualifications. They don't need to come to us, I don't think.
Brian, could we have 3 trustees be on the NASB committee to go through these to bring our top 4?
You can, but you're going to be subject to the open meeting law. So anytime you have a committee that is tasked with trimming or reducing the things that the board will actually consider, it's subject to the open meeting law.
And we don't want to do that. We don't want it, that would discourage applicants who haven't told their employer they're looking for greener pastures. I think we would either have to have the rubric like Ryan explained and rate them individually, and then Deb synthesize that information. I think that Richard made a good point. People that don't meet the minimum qualifications, we don't need to rate those applicants.
Is that still viable, Mr. Russell?
Yeah, so by saying what Trustee Varner said, allowing the independent contractor NASB to essentially filter unqualified applicants. So for example, if somebody doesn't have the master's degree, then they're probably not going to be up for board consideration anyway. And so having them able to filter for minimum qualifications and then allow the board to decide which of the qualified applicants they want to interview is a fine process.
And I also think, we're paying NASB to do some of the work, so we don't have to do it all. It's going to streamline the process for us.
I think the big thing is your expertise, and I appreciate that.
So Trustee Varner, I'm sorry for interrupting in on this question, but if you did the process that we just discussed where minimum qualified applicants are brought to the board for consideration, that could certainly be presented with what is equivalent to a staff recommendation from NASB on the ranks and who they would have filtered it down to for your consideration. And so you have the benefit of that experience while still being able to see all the qualified applicants.
Yeah, I like that idea of having NASB. I mean, we did pay them, we hired them to perform a certain function. I'd like them to weed out the candidates that, that aren't qualified and still rank the candidates that come forward. And then we as a board, I do think we want to be hands-on in that regard, and we want to look at what everybody brings to the table and do our own ranking, and we may agree or disagree, but it brings it to the board and gives us that, that community ability to, to rank within our own district here.
So Joe, just in agreement with you, but I think that what we have to be careful about is we either have to do it the process where we independently evaluate them and give them to Deb to synthesize, because in an open meeting, a lot of candidates won't apply if they know we're going to come together and say, okay, here's the 50 people that applied, and their job's going to be on a public record.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I'd want to do that independently. That makes sense.
So just thinking of how we do it, first, NASB team filters the unqualified applicants. Second, individual trustees go to the district office with Renee and review and rank the remaining. And I'm sure Deb could discuss it with us. If there's 25, maybe we want to narrow it down before then. If there's only 8, you know what I mean? We don't know how many we're going to have at this point, but we would then individually rank them. Then Deb would synthesize that with the ranking that NASB did for those. Is that, and then we would have a public meeting to discuss the talk. See, I mean, it may be that I don't know. Am I jumping?
If I might
Please.
help ideate here a little bit. Previous searches have had 20, 25, and 18 candidates. It's a lot to go through, and it can become very confusing on who you were thinking about, who it was, and there's a lot of information, there's much there. If thinking of those minimum qualifications, well, if they don't have a master's degree, that pretty much is the most minimum qualification we have. 5 years experience, looking at just some of those things, very basic. Nobody's applying without those. So those are already there. In the experience here in Nevada, as well as other experiences through superintendent searches through the association, we have, you really come to see there's like I want to say there's 3 sections of applicants. You have a top tier, and then there's sort of a middle tier that are growing and they're close, and then there's the bottom tier that they're not quite there based on the requirements or the qualifications that are being looked at by the board. And there is disparity there, of those. It may be that, we say we could do the ranking, and you may look at the top 10 and then individually rank those and come back. I would just hate to say, hey, quite frankly, honestly, guys, I would hate to say, hey, we'll just give them all to you without any kind of a structure to what they are. And then, take that and then rank them, if you will. We'll have our own ranking that we would then be able to provide. You can match, you can see, how that is or not. But I might suggest having a number or a percentage of those that come in to think about you working on.
So whatever number she comes up with, Ryan, do those names become public?
So I'd tell you a couple things. One, anybody applying for this position, the application itself is going to be, with some exception, considered a public record. And two, if you narrowed it down to allow NASB to present you, for example, with 5 applicants, the board would always have the option of saying, if they were dissatisfied with the 5 applicants, nope, show me the next 5.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can always get more information if you're feeling as though the pool has not been broadly enough presented.
And that's why I think it's important for NASB to, to weed them out and provide us an initial ranking that we can then, through a private individual effort, go through and review, and we may agree or disagree. But for me, that seems like a reasonable place for us to start.
I can just say for myself, I'd like to see you present as the top 5 and then let us go through those. And like Ryan said, if we're not satisfied, you can always move down the list. And I'm just saying that because that's what I'm used to. I mean, when I've sat on numerous interview boards before, hiring boards, we never went through all the candidates. Personnel would always just provide us the top candidates to interview. And then if we didn't find anybody, select anybody, there was a process to move down.
I concur. I would trust your expertise to give us the top 5 candidates.
I am also very familiar with the process that Richard covered, so I'm comfortable with reviewing the top 5.
Mike, since you brought up wanting to see more, what are your thoughts as we're thinking through this?
I think this is the most important job we have, and I think that we need to be hands-on in the process, and I'm confident in my ability to look through 20 applications, but the same part, I'm one of 7. And so it sounds like I'm the only one with the concern, so.
I share that concern, because this is our one employee. And so reading 20 applications, to me, for our one employee that we hire is not too much of a burden. I don't want to read somebody who has falsified information or something like that. So that kind of weeding out is helpful. I am a little concerned with it just because if we bring the top 5 and then we say we want more, that doesn't mean that we're excluding the top 5. I just want to, I would love to see if our board matches up with the top 5 recommendations. If there's a consensus that helps us see, oh, this particular candidate does meet that. So how we can do that in a way that complies with the open meeting law and is productive. I don't want to, having sat on a hiring committee. I don't do that very often, but having sat on one where that was the question the board of directors had is, well, who else applied? Because it came down to only one remaining. So that was, then we opened it up. Everyone was able to see the applicants. So that has been my experience.
The one other thing that I'm thinking about is if we go through 20 applications, or how many there is, and we come up with our own ranking, you could potentially have 7 different rankings for each individual. Then you have to get together, and how do you resolve that? You may have one ranked at number 10 by 3 people, that same person ranked number 1 by another person. How do you resolve that? Because you could have 7 different rankings for one person.
It would be the same process. It would just be our rankings that they were evaluating.
Yeah, I'm fine with looking at as many applications as we need to, but I'd like them to go through NASB and be cleaned up and weeded out and have your list of rankings, and we can go through them. And I'm confident in my abilities to keep your ranking in mind, but do my own, I'll have my own ranking. I may agree, I may not agree, but I'm happy to look through them all. So I'm not necessarily concerned about limiting them, but I don't want to start with raw data and have to go from there. And then we have to keep in mind as a board, we have to do this in a certain amount of time as well. So, we have to not just review 20 applications, if that's how many we have, but we have to do it in a certain amount of time.
Maybe a way to do that might be, I might suggest, whatever amount of applications come in, that maybe we give them to you in groups rather than a ranking, so that it isn't, because really what I'm hearing is, this is something you are a part of, where you're a part of it regardless. But maybe having it in chunks. Maybe it's the top and a top tier and another tier. And rather than saying, hey, this was what we thought was a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's here's a top group, and you all can then rank them. And who knows? There may be somebody somewhere else. But what I would like to do is make it, like you said, you're very capable, but to help it be manageable in the amount of time that you have. I'm here, and my team is here to support you in this journey, not do it for you, is again, taking that process out of that. And if that would work, that may be an opportunity to do a little of both. Or we can just give them all to you and say, here.
I have concerns too, just because of the panel that's put together, but I think because of our open meeting law provisions that we have, that it makes it difficult for us to go through every single one of them and keep that confidentiality per se going. But I do have concerns too.
Stacy, as Mr. Russell explained, the applications are considered public records. So our confidentiality in this situation is different than it was when we were hiring the executive director.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so we've kind of gone, I don't know if we've gone full circle, but we've certainly followed an obstacle course. And we're not voting on this necessarily right at this time, but we have got to come to some kind of consensus on, what we want to present back to Deb that we can later on this evening cast a vote on. So that being said,
But won't that be done when we do the motion?
it will, yeah.
Consensus, so we don't have to decide that right now.
I guess we
can
don't
move
have
on
to
the
decide it
next
right
thing.
now, but I'm guessing what we're going to present as a motion down the road.
Well, I don't think we have to guess. I think we're gonna have one. Somebody will make one, and if somebody doesn't agree with it, they can make addendums.
We can
or
do it
change
that way.
But I think we can move on to the next thing, because like you said, we're going round and round.
Yeah.
So let's just leave
All
it
right,
to
well,
that. and we
let's
can-
sit on that then. Let's
Yeah.
move on to the next stuff, and then we'll either do it through a motion or we'll revisit it.
So then, let me make sure that's the next one on our little list. Just talking about the process a bit, and the location and process to conduct your interviews. Make that bigger. So we have a calendar, but it's where will your interviews be held? With travel, anything, are you considering having in person, your first round of interviews in person, or are they going to be virtual?
My thought, because we don't know where people are coming from, was the first round of interviews, especially given the climate today, that it'd be virtual. I'm open either way, but keep in mind, in-person will be a cost to us. And if that's of value to us, I'm open to that. But, Zoom, we can, a little easier and more affordable to set up. Not that I want that to be the deciding factor, but that's a factor.
But I think we've all gotten so good at Zoom after these last 18 months that I think it could at least be enough to weed out somebody if we needed to. I agree with you there, Joe.
I see some head nods. Does anybody value in-person interviews over Zoom?
Well, of course, I value in-person interviews over
Yeah,
Zoom,
I
but there's
know.
budgetary
That's-
concerns and other things. But I think for the first round, Zoom interviews would be okay.
So even if the candidate's local, it would be Zoom still? I think that's the way
I think it
you'd
has to
have
be
to do
fair.
it. Yeah,
To
I
be-
think you'd have to, yeah.
Well, or we could give them the option, and then they would make that choice.
Is there a problem, though, with, I think if you do one remote, you'd have to do them all remote. I could be
so.
wrong, but it's
No.
just my gut reaction.
No.
Ryan, do you have any thoughts on that?
This is the most you guys have made me talk in a long time. I don't have a problem given the option. So you
Okay.
can schedule the interview for a date and time and let them know that they can show up in person or virtually, and it'll be up to the person being interviewed. That way you're not imposing a restriction or a benefit on anybody.
And would the interviews need to take place in an open meeting, or if we did it on Zoom, would we record that and would it be live or would it be posted after the fact? How do we need to do that to comply with open meeting law?
My recommendation, because this board will be interviewing as a whole, is that you all do the meeting in person and agendize it for open meeting.
We do ask each candidate, that would be your top ones that you're interviewing, to have that honor system of not watching the previous interviews prior to their own, so that they're not hearing the questions and can prepare differently. Because that can give an unfair advantage to those that are
That's a good point.
third, not first. And if honesty and integrity are something you're looking for, we hope that would be a part of that.
Somehow I think we'd still see a theme.
In the other searches you've done for other districts, how has that been handled? Because I hadn't thought about that, because that could be a real valid point.
Yeah, that'd be a concern of mine.
I mean, has there been any problems you know of with,
Not that we saw.
well, yeah. you wouldn't-
There weren't any that we saw that would be a blatant, hey, this was there. They did record all of them, and then they did post them, which is something that we'll work together to do, to record them and post them, so that each one of the candidates that you're interviewing, will have a survey, so that the community can also have input on those interviews. So if they're wanting to watch them, and giving them time to be able to do that. If they're not able to attend the meeting that evening or that afternoon when you have them, there is the recorded interviews, they would be able to sit and watch and be able to then participate in a survey to give their ideas and feedback of each one of the candidates. You then have that community input to each one of those candidates, which which is a part of that community involvement.
Yeah, I'm also thinking, I know when we get on a Zoom meeting, you can tell what participants are there at the meeting.
Yes.
Is there some way to tell if there's 2 or 3 candidates on the Zoom at one particular time?
It would depend on how you're doing them. If you're using, if you're broadcasting the meeting so that it's, it's being broadcast, then we don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you have that ability for that. If they're on Zoom, only those that are invited to that Zoom session would be on that Zoom session, if that's how you set that
I
up.
can still watch it. Somebody else's.
It depends on how you're going to hold that meeting on that day, if it's going to be a broadcast or just recording and putting on later. During COVID, during the time when we had to have, when everyone was on Zoom, they were live broadcasts. And so that was a time to say, hey, all honesty, please don't watch. They're being live streamed. So it could be a little different here where they're zooming in specifically and you've got them on the screen in here and whoever's in the building would be a part of that. And you don't have that worry of somebody else being on the Zoom because they don't have the link to that invitation. So much to think about.
I know. Would you guys prefer to have the interview processes take place here, or sometimes we've had meetings at the district office in the boardroom? Does that matter? I mean, I know this
Yeah,
building is heavily scheduled, and if we're doing 3 or 4 interviews over 75 minutes, it's going to be a full day.
And that would be something that we had to look at is the calendar for this room, because like you said, it does get booked. And there are certain restrictions, but I think it would be optimal to have it here just because we have it could be a lot more transparent with the broadcast, but it's going to really depend on the schedule for this room.
So I'm gonna keep us moving, but it does sound, and we'll get there. We'll find out if that's what it is. Maybe virtual meetings, and then here in the boardroom potentially.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Virtual meetings here in the boardroom, unless it's unavailable, then a plan B could be the district conference room.
And I'm kind of wondering, I'm looking at question 2, where Stacy and I both were, about no disturbances, distractions, and so I think virtual meetings would be one way that we'd eliminate that. I would hate to have somebody here to interview and they're getting heckled or something.
That does it. When we think of, when we have open meeting law, it really is, if it's the interview and where it is and you're here and you have people that are going to be there, it is, we can't guarantee no disturbances ever, or, those kind of things. When you're on Zoom, and what this is here, and when we're looking at this, with the interview setting, is that everybody can hear. And if you've got them on your prompts there, so that when you're speaking, you're there, it's all of your videos are on at all times, their video is on at all times, so you would all be able to see each other as if you were in the room together. I don't see any issues with disturbances or other activities around that time.
Okay, I'm just maybe just for clarification, because I thought Mr. Russell explained that if we do virtual interviews on Zoom, that he would recommend all of us being together in the same room.
Correct.
So, I'm sorry, Dr. Oliver. My thought of it, to comply with the open meeting law, is you guys would be conducting a board meeting essentially as usual. If you wanted to allow the applicant to appear virtually or in person, you can. But your meeting would proceed as any other meeting. And so we wouldn't be doing the meeting in total virtually, just allowing somebody to show up virtually, just like we allow board members to show up virtually if they need to.
And Trustee Crossman, what I was talking about is if they're on Zoom, I don't know if you use Blue Jeans, how you do the room, if it's all one, but when the person is talking, the camera would either zoom on you, would come into you, not zoom, or you would be on your screen with your camera on, so that the interviewee can see you all. That's all I was getting at. If you're using that technology, you just want to be sure that they can see everybody, because it's very tough to do an interview and not read the room and not see what's going on. That's all I was really, really trying to drive at. So we've got we'll get back and think of that interview structure of virtual and where, and that will come to at a later process. The interview questions are very important. The same questions will be asked of each of the candidates, so each one of you will have, we'll have questions, and you will each ask basically the same process, the same question of each one of the candidates. You become the SME, the subject matter expert of that question, so that is a real focus, so that when you're coming back together and discussing, that might be the question that you are going to really highlight of what you heard. Everyone has the opportunity, but if there were questions, you would be the one that might be like, did she say this? You would be the one to really come back and say, this is what I heard. Everyone would have that opportunity, but it really helps give a focus to making sure we're hearing everything and being able to answer questions when they're not here and you're discussing each one of the candidates. Does that make sense? Okay. If you look, there are samples, samples of questions. Let me find them. You'll see in your packet you have the scoring rubric, which again will be we will personalize to include the qualifications and things that you have thought of. And then you've got a question bank. I'm going to pull this up. The question bank you'll see matches the rubric. So we've got general questions, leadership of staff types of questions, relationship with board, personnel relations, student achievement, curriculum and instruction, financial management, strategic planning, public relations, school image, parent and community engagement, and then finance, budget, technology, and innovation, which are a type of question that are competency-based questions. Each one of the sections there, again, matches the rubric. You've had these, and we can go through and we can look at those. We can pick questions out from each one of those, and I would suggest at least one question from each area, and then taking a look at those, they may be able to be combined into one. Many of the questions that you'll ask really do hit more than one thing, maybe with a focus. For example, you're talking, talking about leadership of staff, may also hear things that connect with community engagement or, curriculum. So I'll let you look for a minute. Questions on the questions so far?
Deb, in basically a 60-minute interview, because you're supposed to give them 10 to 15 minutes to ask questions, how many questions do you recommend that we come up with?
8, 2, 4, 6, 14. You want to come up with 8 to 10 questions. And that's why we look at these, and then you can combine them. Sometimes when we ask questions, when you ask it a different way in a different section, you'll get a different type of response, a different type of examples, potentially. For each question that you ask, you can ask for clarification of what they're talking about or further explanation of what they're talking about. Asking other questions unless it pertains particularly to something that they've said, that's okay, but we don't ask separate questions within a question. And as we go through those, and we'll practice, and we'll give some examples of that. On the screen, just to begin with, President Cacioppo had shared already some thoughts of questions that that he came up with, that looking at all of it. And I just have them up here as a start for a boilerplate.
And just for the record, I went ahead and put these together. It was just my own personal thoughts without looking at this list. I kind of did it in advance, and then I went into the list to see if maybe I was on track or whatnot, but it's just more of the bank to consider.
I'm counting among the questions that were given as a base of it, 16 different areas, because round 2 was a different one. So 16 different areas that we should take one question from each, but we should only have 10 to 12 or 8 to 10 questions. So to me, this seems like something that would be, in the interest of time, go home, pick the questions you like the best, and then we see if we could submit them, and maybe Renee could compile them, and we could discuss this again to go through which are the, I think there's a lot to try to synthesize tonight of which questions we're going to ask if we're going to make that decision later on. I think.
Yes, I'm smiling
And-
because we discussed that.
Yeah.
This is a process, and it is. And so, Trustee Crossman, that's a great idea to take these and look. This is, again, a lengthy process, thinking about it. So there are that many, and that's where we're talking about the combination. I'm pulling them together, looking at the rubric, and really understanding what the rubric is. Again, we will, as quickly as we can, get you this rubric so that it's updated for you. But it's again, the starting point for you.
So with that, then if we do that, and I'm fine with that, that makes sense. This is an action item, so we would approve the other items, excluding this, and then we'd have to bring this back to the board for action on the interview questions. And my hope would be, so we don't put this out too far, that we can be prepared to have this on our next agenda, which is next week, so that this could be available for a vote if we choose to go that route.
And I'm kind of wondering, do we really want the questions out there that early for potential
Well-
candidates?
That was my thought, is then we'll have prepared answers, which is good that these people, the interviewees, will be prepared, but it's also, we want to know, a lot of job of a superintendent is to think on their feet and to give responses. So I'm not sure we want to give too much advance notice.
Another thought is, one of the cultures of the school district is interviews are not an easy process in Carson City. And of all of our other applicants, they're doing presentations and performance tasks, and I think it's only fair that we have something similar as part of this, because we're having teachers and principals and assistant principals and deans really jump through 3 or 4 hoops to get hired, and then our superintendent, we're just asking standard questions. I don't think it's a match. Just being honest.
No. Most of your candidates will come in with some sort of a presentation, an outline of things. Outline. They will come with prepared. That they will then point you to. As you're asking them specific questions, they might say, well, if you look in this area and these are the things I've done. Here's the high school that we saw the greatest gains, and these are the things that we did with. They don't just come here, they don't really just sit here and answer the specific questions. They really do come prepared with those.
But you've never seen our principal interviews.
No,
Our
and-
principal interviews are extreme. I mean, we have them do a presentation, we give them a topic, but they have to come up with how they're gonna present it and.
And that
And then we do-
typically goes with that second round of interviews. And if you'd like to use those kind of questions for the first round, where they're the,
And I think the second round is fine for that. I think we
I
would
do
want
too.
that for the finalists. But I mean, the point is, I think that as we're looking at this, I want us to kind of match what we're asking our
Yes.
superintendent to do to what we're asking our employees to do,
yep.
just to be in solidarity.
Yeah, to me, that makes sense. I like that idea. I like doing that in the second round. Okay. So Deb, can you, walk us through sorry to jump around, but back to the schedule. When, I didn't think about making these questions available too soon, so I'm glad you brought that up. But I also want to make sure I know what the timing is so that we, based on our board meetings, when we're going to have questions set.
So I believe that we'll begin advertising tomorrow. This will be posted and out. It will be tomorrow afternoon, because there are things here to adjust from tonight. This will be open tomorrow, and it's closing not until January 7th, I believe. So you have, pardon? Oh, okay. It's closing January 7th. So you have time between now and when it closes to actually think about and get these and have these questions.
Yeah.
Because once it closes, then we have a 2-week time frame before those interviews. I believe we just did 2 weeks
I think you're right.
of when the first interviews are coming. So depending on the decisions tonight from the action that you take, within those 2 weeks, a lot will occur looking at applications and, making those decisions of who's coming. That help with?
Yeah, that does. Okay.
The one thing you have to remember during that period is holidays, Christmas and the break for
Right.
staff.
And we're past all that. I mean, if I look at the January board calendar for meetings, our first meeting in January would be Tuesday, January 11th. And if we're going to close, if the deadline is, or application deadline closes the 7th, and then they have a 2-week process before we start interviews, we could have questions decided on the 11th, or we could have a special meeting the following week, depending on how close you want to cut it to minimize prep time. So for right now, we can, for discussion purposes, I would propose the 11th, having the questions ready.
And where exactly are we advertising the position? Because I'd assume it's in more than one place.
This will be advertised. It will go out to all members of the National Superintendent Searchers Association. So everyone that belongs there will have that and will post it as they do in different states. It will be on Edweek Top Jobs. It will be posted on LinkedIn. It will be posted on the NASA, our Superintendent Association here in Nevada website, the NASB website. We'll share it specifically with our region associations for posting there. It's not always that we get through the National Superintendent Searchers Association that it's always posted that they do, but we do have conversations of having it posted for within our region. So we do a national, it's out there nationally. And then it will,
Is that something we can post on our website?
Yes, you
I
also.
mean, on our job?
Yes, it
website?
will be posted here on the Carson's, on your website, it's available. It will be on the NASB website. And then we also send out paper announcements to districts, letting them know so that it's not just, it's not just a posting there, but we do send out a paper announcement for posting in the districts within the state that this is an opening. Top Jobs from Edweek is one of the largest, or the, it's the one that most job seekers go to and find the information. And it is national.
And just to be clear, just because I'd spoken to someone from another district in the state who their search, which was not you, but their a superintendent search contracted firm only brought them outside candidates or candidates from outside the district. And I just want to make sure and make it really clear that we would be considering not only candidates from outside the district, but also candidates from inside the district so that we can have the internal and external, just to make sure.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. We did not clarify that it would be anything but that, and so that would have been thank you for the clarification. Yes, the thought is internal. It's any applicant who is qualified for the job.
Joe had to step out for a minute, but if I'm hearing right, that everyone agrees to January 11th as having the questions ready? Okay.
I think that would be good. My only question is if we don't have a slate of candidates, possibly until 2 weeks after it closes, and being concerned that we have, I don't know if we want our interview questions being public that soon before we would begin interviews.
If we're talking 8 to 10 questions, it's not like it's going to be a huge problem to photocopy questions. I mean, Renee's pretty proficient at those types of tasks, right, Renee?
So are people thinking about backing it up even more past January 11th?
Something to consider. Those that, if you, two different thoughts on that. If you're doing it sooner and they're there, people aren't real, they may not go back and look at, never mind. It was a bad thought. They're going to go back and look at all of your board minutes because they want to know where they're going. That's why I stopped. I'm like, do it now, and they don't know they're applying. They're going to go back and look, so it doesn't matter. I don't know if it matters when excuse me, when it does, the types of questions you're asking, they should be able to, the candidates that you're looking for, they're going to be able to answer these even if they didn't have information in front of them, and they should be able to tell you so many things about them and what they're doing. So, the questions are for you to have the continuity of being able to ask these candidates the same questions so that everyone has the same opportunity for that. How they prepare for that is, that's theirs, how they do that. So I don't know that, I think the time on the questions is more on where it works for you and the time that you want to dedicate to looking at them, bringing them together and having the conversations of what they are. So.
I think we have some flexibility.
There was some talk about is January 11th, and maybe I'm misstating this, but is January 11th too soon to have the questions out?
Yeah, I'm flexible with when we release them, really at the pleasure of the board. In lieu of trying to keep this as fair as possible, limiting the amount of time folks have to prepare probably is helpful.
So Joe, and I'm thinking that first meeting of the year is always a busy meeting with lots
is.
of business. I almost would suggest we formulate our questions in the second meeting of the year. And then that's a little bit less to try to fit into one big meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that would be, the second meeting of the year would be the
January 25th.
25th. Okay. And I'm sorry, I had to step out for a minute, but so interview questions would be scheduled about when, Deb? Or interviews would be scheduled when?
I think she said after the job listing closes on January 7th, there would be at least 2 weeks to
Yeah.
compile that, and then
Okay.
that would be,
So that would work out.
well,
That,
we'd have the questions, but if we are also going to be doing a compilation and a ranking, that could affect that timeline.
okay. Well, we can just, yeah. I'm just trying to see if.
Might I, with the thoughts of what's going on here and what you have just, so the timing of it, might we hold off on then? We know you want a superintendent, and we want that to be under, we want to offer a contract by May 25th, June 15th. Yeah, how much time do you want, a crossover time of a new superintendent with Mr. Stokes? Is there some crossover time that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think crossover time is important, but one thing that was brought up to me was if they're in a position, we may not have as much transition time as maybe I would like to have because they have to complete their obligations, from wherever they're at. So originally I was thinking I'd like to have, just because I hate to wait till the last minute, I'd like to have a contract signed and in place, by April. Doesn't mean they're starting in April, but the contract's signed and they know when their start date and everything is.
I think April is a good target because at the end of the year is crazy. So
Yeah.
regardless of who we hire, May and June is going to be nuts. So I think April is a good time to shoot for.
So with that, let me come back with a calendar,
Okay.
because we have made some changes to the process, and you will need time, to really process the applicants. So I will come back with a suggested timeline that you will then be able to go through. We could do that tonight, but again, let me just,
Yeah, I think it's better.
we'll
if
come
you-
back and do
yeah.
that.
So I don't know, I'm looking at some of the suggested motions that have been drafted, and I'm thinking we're prepared to possibly take action on what the salary range would be. And then the rest of it, I think, is kind of still, the rest of those proposed motions are still a little bit up. And do you think we should take, I think those are still, what? Mike?
I think we could do 2 and 3. I think most of us said we were comfortable with 5 candidates. And then 3, we're looking at Zoom for the first round, and then,
I think you can make the motions as they come up. I don't think you have to.
yeah, I know,
Through
I'm just responding to what Laurel was saying. And I think in this third one, it's, if we do Zoom for the first round, and then I think the easiest for us would be to schedule interviews a time we could do it in here so that we could broadcast it easily to the public.
Okay. Well, we could check their schedule, and it's early, maybe we can get on it a little sooner. Or not get on it, but schedule it sooner.
Just a question, should we, because we did go over, it wasn't on a suggested motion, but we did work together on the job description. Should we make a motion to approve that, or or can we just use the
Yes,
draft that's
I would
there?
recommend that.
Ryan, could I ask you a question? If we don't, if the agenda doesn't specifically list the job description, should we?
So,
So I think you're good. The agenda item was for the criteria and process of seeking a superintendent. The job description is certainly under the criteria. I just told the president that if you guys want to take just a few minutes recess, I've scribbled a motion for you. If you want me to just tell you what it is on the record, I'm fine to do that. I think I've got notes on everything you guys have done, and I think we can do it in one motion if you want. But it's up to the board.
I'm fine with that on the record. But it, you know, we've gone for a little while and a number of us have gotten up anyway, so do we need like a 3-minute break? Yeah, okay, let's go ahead and let's take a 5-minute recess. It's 7:58. We'll be back at 8:03.
I'm sorry? I'm going to go that way for a minute.
call this meeting back to order. And Deb, did we abruptly cut you off, or did you have any? Okay.
Just before you go to the motion and we end this item, I would just like to say we will have some next steps of follow-up with the process and how it goes. But thank you right now. Thank you for your time, the consideration, and really what a pleasure to be working with you. So thank you.
Yeah, Deb, I want to thank you too. I appreciate you and everybody at NASB. I mean, everything you guys do that I've been involved in is top notch, and I appreciate the effort, the guidance, the cooperation here, because this is new to us. We, as you know, we haven't had to think about a new superintendent for 14 years. So I've never had to think about hiring a superintendent. So I appreciate that. I was talking with Mr. Russell, and he sketched out what could be a motion for us to consider. And so if we're ready for that, Mr. Russell, if you wouldn't mind providing us your thoughts for us to make the motion on.
Okay, so understanding that obviously I can't make a motion, I'll present to you guys what I think I heard in some areas, and if I fill in anything that's not correct, you can disregard the motion altogether. You can say so moved, and that will be deemed as the person making that motion. You can also say so moved with the following changes, and anything that I got wrong or that you wouldn't want in your consideration, you can change and go from there. But I think a good starting spot from what I heard tonight is a motion to proceed with the process of seeking a new superintendent by directing NASB to advertise for the position based on the characteristics and qualifications discussed by the board this evening. This motion includes the approval of a possible salary range of $170,000 to $205,000. Directing NASB to present up to 10 qualified applicants, I picked that number out of the air, to the board for consideration, along with NASB's ranking and recommendation for candidates to be interviewed. Interviewing process will include using the Robert C. Kroll room if it's available, or other location at the discretion of the board. Interviews to be conducted in person with the option for any applicant to appear virtually. The motion further includes approval of the job description as presented, and shall continue discussion of the timeline and the potential questions to be asked to a later date.
So moved.
Second it?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further board discussion? Seeing none, do we have any in-person public comment? Please, just, it's the usual public comment period, maximum of 3 minutes. We ask that you don't just repeat the comments presented before you. This is all what was handed out to everybody. So, sir, if you would provide us your name and then let us know your thoughts.
Thank you, President. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I've been away from any connection with activities of boards or supervisors or such, and I just want to thank you all for the work that you put in. I was a little bit boggled, and I came up with a different result than Ryan did, and I can't read your Russell, came up with the conclusion. I had thought that you had come to different sets of considerations. So that was a little bit of a change up on me. I don't know where I missed something. I must have dozed off, but not because of the lack of activity here or intensity of your involvement. I do appreciate all that. I have a lot to learn about. I suspect that you're all going to miss Mr. Richard Stokes. And I should have probably gotten to know more about him, because apparently he's been a stand-up guy for us for a long time. And I'm sorry that this is the first opportunity to really get a chance to get a better understanding, perspective of what's this all about. But I do appreciate everything, and a chance to be here tonight was just a fluke, actually. I intended to be somewhere else, but I thought the wrong day. But it was to my benefit that I'm here, and thank you very much. This has been an interesting experience. I've got lots to catch up on, and I wish you all well in the process of getting your new superintendent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Richard.
Hello, my name is Richard Nagel. I just have a few questions. We are a pretty diverse group of people in our schools. Right now, the Latino population's around 46%. And yet I don't see anything that's used in the questions to address that. And I think we really need to take care of our Latino population. They're the ones that could use a good helping hand. And I think it'd be a disservice not to have someone who doesn't have experience or dealing with Latinos or a diverse population and in getting them enrolled in creating the desired outcome of everybody being able to be ready for the world. The other thing is, again, I would like to see quantifiable questions, so that, again, when the guy comes up or the gal comes up, whoever it is, comes in and says, you ask them, can you give me an example of a continuous quality improvement project that you saw from beginning to end, and how did you measure its outcome? Those things, so that you have something measurable in front of you that they did, how they incorporated, how they improved something. Because again, we don't want to be static in Carson City. We want to be better than tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be better than today, and the day after that's going to be better. So we need to have some kind of continuous quality improvement. I mean, again, if you had a mold issue in this thing, how did you deal with that? How was that corrected? Was there a policy and procedure that needed to be rearranged? Was there a standardized testing that you came up with? Was there something that you created that improved the quality of that environment? And how does that relate to your job in Carson City? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Betsy.
Pepsi Strasburg. I'm glad to see the collaboration and flexibility in the job description. One of the things I didn't see that the new superintendent would have to be a broad thinker. There is so much regulations coming up. There is a diverse opinions. So I think the superintendent would need to think out of the box to create innovative and creative solutions to balance the needs of the stakeholders. The ability to do situational analysis and make a judgment that is data-driven and with a balanced risk-reward assessment. So basically no straight black and white solutions. There may be some flavor of gray in there. On the job description, I saw that the 5 years of experience was changed to prefer to expand the list of possible candidates. However, we're limiting it to public teaching experience. Why don't we expand it to include private so that we have a broader list of possible candidates? In question D in your survey, it said establish high academic expectations. But in the job description, it did not say academic. It just says high expectations. So I would like to urge the board to make that small change. As far as compensation is concerned, I think there is a lot of value to look at total compensation because I'm not an expert on this, but I suspect state and district benefit packets are quite good. And then the other thing is, if you increase the compensation of the superintendent, how does it affect the associate superintendent positions? We need to think about that. The last thing is, nothing is at risk. We are expecting this new superintendent to make great things, improve our academic achievement, et cetera, and yet there is none of the compensation is at risk. There is no variable component to that compensation. And I would like to urge the board to consider both a fixed and a variable portion of that compensation to measure on those specific goals. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, next public comment?
Hi, good afternoon. Karen Stevens. Thank you for the possibility to be able to comment on this action. Yeah, I thought, no, it's
Yeah, it
okay.
sounds like it is.
Okay, Karen Stevens for the record. I was just thinking that maybe we should have Joan Ebert apply because she makes $128,998 a year. So that would be quite a bonus for her to apply for this position. Even though she's a state superintendent, it seems odd that a district superintendent would make so much more money. The other thing is I'm a little concerned that there won't be the applicants that are district employees might have advantages over outside applicants, as one of the people that work for NASD, Sukima, has worked for the district many, many years. And so she may or may not have biases. I don't know, but she knows a lot of the people that Laurel indicated that district people would be applying for this position. So I'm just concerned that she might have some opinions for or against employees that she knows that are applying. So that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any additional in person? Mr. Wolf.
Good evening, Mr. President, trustees, Superintendent Stokes, staff, and audience. My name is Brian Wallace. I'm president of the Orange County Education Association, representing 80% of the teachers within the district. OCA has sincerely appreciated the 14 years Mr. Stokes has dedicated
Hey,
to
Brian,
this
sorry
position.
to interrupt. Laurel, do you want to adjust the clock? Because it's going to beep on. Sorry,
Thank you,
Brian.
sir. I'm not used to it either. I'm used to my association report part.
Sorry we interrupted you.
Not a problem, sir. So, thank you, sir. We have enjoyed all that time. It's been a pleasure working with him and be able to collaborate through him, and then, of course, through you to the board, since he is your sole employee. OCA does notice that there is one quality missing, or at least not apparent to us in the material at this time, and that's the relationship with the labor and bargaining groups. Knowing that we have spent the 14+ years in truly trying to approach everything within this district as part of a collaborative climate, we feel that there should be at least some questions that will address those labor relationships when it comes to our bargaining groups. This district has reached out to NSEA as part of that collaborative relationship when it has come to issues at the legislative level. We fully believe that both parties need to work together, not only because of the collective bargaining agreement, but also because it is what's best for our students, since we represent the staff, and it is the staff that has that contact with our students. Studies continue to show that the trust between the superintendent and union leadership plays a significant role in the success of a district. OCA believes that our district continues to lead the way within the state of Nevada and even nationally when it comes to terms of our labor relationships. We do wish to avoid being like our neighbors to the north or the south and having any of the type of conflicts that have arisen through their superintendent hiring choices and their bargaining groups. In respect for our time, OCA will send the proposed questions to Ms. Cortez and ask that they be forwarded to you for your consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Cassiopo, I do not, but I do have public comment when we get to the regular, general public comment.
Mike, do you want to amend it to include in the job description a line that says experience, has experience with labor and bargaining groups?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a revised motion. Don, you second it?
Deb, did you get that? Deb Oliver? Okay.
We have to go back through, okay. All right, board, with the amended motion and second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, board. Thank you, everybody, and Deb, thank you. Moving on to item 4, public comment. Public comment will be accepted in person or through virtual participation via email. Comments may be made by members of the public on any matter within the authority of this board. Please note the public comment will be taken on items marked for possible action. Before action is taken on such items, a member of the public are encouraged to comment on such items at the time they're being considered. Although members of the board may respond to questions and discuss issues raised during public comment, no action may be taken on such matter until the matter is placed on an agenda for action at the meeting of the board. In making public comment, speakers are asked to come to the podium, sign in, speak in the microphone, identify themselves for the record. Speakers are instructed to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes, regardless of whether the comments are made in person or through virtual participation, and not simply repeat comments made by others. This is for discussion only. Do we have any general public comment? Yes, sir.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. And thank you very much. I obviously didn't catch on to the proper procedure on this, and I'm not sure who is going to respond to this or even if it's something you would be able to. But as I walk, I've watched your trees grow on the properties of your school grounds. And I would suggest that they need some tender loving consideration. Some of them aren't receiving what I consider a proper amount of growth area. Some are restricted by poles and by restrictive lines that were intended to help them develop and get a root set. And they're way past their stay time. They're girdling the trees. And there's not a lot of attention to the trees or the foliage around your school properties, and that's a big investment. So I would really like to encourage you to send someone out. I volunteered, but under the circumstances, as an individual that's not licensed and not hired by you, my say is just somebody that had some work with trees in the prior. So you've got a lot of trees that are going to get strangled by the way that you're choosing to support them. At a certain point, you let a tree go, and if it falls over, it's not meant to be there. But if you wait till it gets big after having restrained it, it doesn't develop the roots. And so I'd like to encourage that. Plus a little plug out to the community. Watch out for people that are walking. I have a heck of a time, so a little PR thing or a shout out for pedestrians. Please watch out for us, bicycle riders and such, and be safe out there. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close in-person public comment. Renee, you said we had some virtual participation, please?
Yes, Mr. Cassiopo, thank you. This comment is from Jason Tingle, and he would like to let the board know that Mr. Conley took care of the water misunderstanding. He's actually an awesome guy, and I wanted to let the board know that. The only thing I want to comment on is the mask situation. I'm sure the board is aware that it is fully our choice to mask or not to mask. With that said, our positivity rate is still hovering at 5%. There is no way to tell if the kids are getting it at school or if parents are bringing it home to them. I fear psychological trauma will be found down the road about this, and I don't know about you, but I don't know if I can live with myself knowing I damaged any of my children from this when it wasn't really needed. I also made a correlation to the State Department of Health about the increased vaccination rate, which lowers the risk to our children. So I do believe there is a correlation there. With that also said, I believe you will find the overwhelming majority of folks are not exactly thrilled with the mask policy. It is very easy to make it one choice. If it's one's choice, the people who want the mask can do it, and the people who do not want them do not have to do it. In my eyes, that is a fair compromise for all. I would like to ask the board to have a meeting regarding this as soon as possible. Of all the data I have compiled, I believe I have made a compelling case to show and prove the science. I'm asking the board to please reconsider giving the parents the option to mask or not. I also did confirm with the governor's office that we are not looking at any legal or monetary problems by making this decision, and I can assure you of that. I hope this makes it to you guys, as I was not aware of the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments, Renee?
No, Mr. Cassioppo, thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll close public comment, and item 5 is adjournment. So we are adjourned. Again, thank you, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your Monday evening.